In this video, we're going to go over working with encaustics. So encaustic paint is really cool. Basically, it's composed of beeswax, resin, and pigment. And then there's encaustic medium, which is what I am melting here. Encaustic medium is basically the same thing as encaustic paint, except without the pigment. This is just more clear. So again, made with beeswax and resin. So it's really, really a durable medium to use, especially because it's kind of immune to moisture, right? And the beeswax is very soft and moldable, which allows us to carve into it, to make some cool shapes, to build up some really nice texture. But then there's also resin included, which increases the melting temperature of the wax and also gives it a really nice hardness and allows it to take a higher polish if we wanted to. So it really helps with the durability there. Now you do want to make sure you're working with a heated palette of some sort that allows you to adjust the temperature. So I'm just using my skillet since that's what I have available, and I'm making sure to set it to 200 degrees. So that's going to be a really great temperature for this pan of the encaustic medium. You want to make sure that you have good ventilation wherever you're working with encaustic. So maybe it's exhaust fans or just some sort of ventilation to get fresh air in your workspace with this medium. Also, we're working with a lot of heated tools and heated equipment here. So for safety purposes, you also might want to have a burn kit on hand and a fire extinguisher just to put safety first here. So in the background there, that yellow tool is a heat gun. That's just another example of one of those heated tools that we're using, and we're basically going to be using that to reactivate the different layers of encaustic. And then in addition, I'm kind of just preparing some different collage pieces that I want to use for my board. So I just cut out this image, and it looks like I kind of missed recording this, but what I did was I painted a layer of encaustic medium on my encaustic board, and now I'm just placing that image directly onto it. Then I'm using the heat gun to go ahead and apply heat to it, and that encaustic is kind of acting like a glue. So even though it is, again, beeswax and resin based, it's definitely a really, really good tacky surface when it's heated, and it does allow that image to adhere really well. Now, I did not take this photo. This is just a photo from a newspaper that I had clipped out or cut out. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just kind of using this for the background. I really like the contrast here in those diagonal lines. So I'm going to be placing my own image over top and just kind of using this as the background. So here I am applying another layer of that encaustic medium directly over top because I want to cover up pretty much this whole thing. I don't really want to see another photographer's work. Even though it's great work, I want this to be an original piece. So I'm just applying a nice layer of encaustic medium over top of it. And then I'm taking my image. So this one was a photo I took, so I'm going to be cutting it out and using parts of this image to start to collage over. So with each layer that I put on, I do just need to use my heat gun to kind of reactivate that encaustic medium. That's going to make it warmed up and sticky again. So all these different layers adhere really nicely to it. And so I'm just kind of continuing this process of finding different newspaper clippings that I want to use and applying my own image on top of it and putting more layers of the encaustic medium, building up some nice texture, using the heat gun to reactivate, and then rinse and repeat. Now, something that makes encaustic especially cool and really unique is you can carve it, scrape it, collage it kind of like we're doing here. You can create other textures with it, combine it with oil, right? There's so much that you can do. So I actually use some of my carving tools and start to carve out some designs into it later on. Now what I'm doing here is I'm actually splattering some encaustic paint. So it is just white encaustic paint. So again, this is the wax mixed with some resin, but also mixed with white pigment. So I'm kind of splattering it and using it just to kind of paint the edges and just add a little more interest to this piece. So I'm kind of putting that along the outer corners, and then here I am going in with those carving tools, just kind of carving in some sporadic designs, right? Kind of circling the area where the eye would be to kind of help pull the eye in there a little more, and creating some unique textures with this movement, with those lines. So it is just so much fun being able to build out those layers of the encaustic and then carve into them. So I'm making sure to wear gloves here and just kind of applying more paint, doing more carving, and kind of repeating the process to create my art piece. So now I'm looking at this and deciding, I do want some color in here. So what I'm taking is a pigment stick. So this is just a burnt sienna pigment stick, which is pretty much oil paint in a stick form. So it makes it really easy just to go and kind of apply these thick layers of colored oil paint to the outside edges of my piece in the parts that where I want to apply it. So I'm just going in and kind of applying it around the edges and the other areas where I want to kind of pull my viewer's eye to. And with those gloves, I can just go ahead and kind of smudge it out, blur it out, and I really like the way it kind of accentuates those carvings that I had added before. So I'm making sure to really extend it around those areas. Here I have my near final piece. So next I want to go through a Modge Podge transfer. So I apologize for the really shaky footage, but I just printed out my picture here. Now with a Modge Podge transfer, you really want to make sure you're using cheap photo printer for this. I know you don't hear me say that often, but cheap printer paper works best for this because we want to basically pull away the paper later, leaving the color. Again, I know, really bad footage. It's getting a little sharper here, a little bit. But anyways, what I'm doing is I'm taking my canvas here and I am just coating it with a layer of Modge Podge. So Modge Podge is just a really awesome tool for creating a sticky surface to adhere my image to. So I'm placing down that image and then we're going to start burnishing it. So basically rubbing that image up against the canvas to make sure it is really flattened against it, that there's no air bubbles or anything like that. So I left it out to dry overnight. You want to give it like at least 24 hours to dry. And then we're ready to start the process of actually removing the paper. The key here is to remove the paper but to leave the color. And to do that, we need to apply some water. So you can use like a bucket of water, a bowl of water. I'm just kind of using my faucet here, applying water. I applied a little too much water. It really doesn't need that much. But anyways, we're applying water and then we're just going to go ahead and rub off the paper. So if we zoom in here, you can really see that texture of the paper and how we're just kind of pulling off that material. Now the key is we're going to keep rubbing it until we take off the paper but leave the color on our canvas. So this is a really cool, simple way. There we can really kind of see that image exposed. We don't want to rub as hard, like we don't want to dig our nails into it or anything around the colored part, or we do risk scraping it off of the canvas. But again, if you just keep rubbing it, removing that paper texture, you'll eventually reveal the canvas underneath with the color now applied to our canvas. So this is another really cool technique, really cool way to put our image down. And then we can always go over this with a layer of encaustic later if we wanted to. So thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful for learning just a few more ways to apply your images to your canvases in a fun way. Have a good one.